Hello and welcome to our final edition of the Days of Zen summer series. I am so delighted to be introducing you today to my absolute favorite spiritual blogger, Chris Cade. Chris, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Tim. I am looking forward to this adventure, and I'm really curious where we're going to go. So let's have some fun.
Well, it started about 3 years ago when I found your site. I'm not even sure how I found it, except, oh, yes, that's right. I was Googling for A Course in Miracles. And I was, at that time, a free content online junkie. And I had gone actually to the bookstore to look at A Course in Miracles. I found this massive book that cost way too much more than I was willing to spend at the time, especially for information that I was very doubtful about. So doing a little bit of Googling, coming across your site, I found the course, and it was, at the time, it was being offered on a daily basis over the course of a year, and it was free of charge. Is that still the case?
Yeah, I still give away A Course in Miracles for free, the workbook lessons, just like you came through, one per day.
It was life-changing. Oh my goodness. Okay, so in the beginning, I'm getting an email from A Course in Miracles, and I'm doing these little practices every day, and I'm starting to learn gratitude and learn forgiveness and learn about the nature of things, and not entirely swallowing everything whole, and still a little bit uncertain about some of the philosophy, but so grateful for the immersion. And in the meantime, alongside these, almost on a daily basis, I was getting an email from Chris with a blog. And I was like, hey, this is kind of cool too. And when I read Chris's blog, it was in line with the way that I thought. It was a process of unraveling the mysteries of all aspects of life, and his wording and voice felt like my own. It was just so much fun to read, and I'm like, okay, I can handle this extra email in my inbox. This is actually pretty cool to receive, and the two of you together ended up changing my life 3 years ago. It was just miraculous, and I really appreciate you. Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome. I am honored, and that always, knowing I make the difference is actually what keeps me going. It's what got me started years ago with a little website sharing spiritual stories, and I didn't know if anybody cared at all about what I was doing. And then I started getting thank you replies to my emails, and that's actually what the catapult was that feedback of, this actually matters. I think so many people feel like they don't make a difference. They don't think the little things matter. And I've really come to realize that it's the little things that actually make the biggest difference, because they compound over time, right? One thank you message didn't move the needle. 2 or 3 didn't move the needle. But when I started getting enough of them, it moved the needle to the point where I was like, I want to do this. I want to do this for a living. I want to help people. Forget the corporate stuff. Let's do this. But that wouldn't have happened with 1 or 2 thank yous. So, messages like yours, what you just shared, that is why I do what I do. So thank you for giving me that feedback, and to be here with you now 3 years later is a true joy and a privilege.
And I still look forward to your emails daily. Can you share with the Days of Zen community a little bit about how you actually got into this in the first place?
Yeah. So it's not a very pretty story. I was in the corporate world, 6-figure job, a beautiful wife, kid on the way, work from home, perfect everything, Silicon Valley condo, the big 401k. I mean, you name it, it was there for me, right? And there was one challenge, though. I didn't have any interest in self-awareness, personal development, spirituality. This is back in 2006 or so. And what happened was, in this relationship, my wife at the time would have challenges. Like every relationship does, she would express her concerns with things that weren't quite working in the relationship. And me lacking self-awareness and also having my own host of self-esteem issues, confidence issues, codependency challenges, all this kind of stuff that I wasn't aware of at the time. She would have these challenges. I would pick up the rug. I would then sweep everything under the rug. I'd put the rug down when she would stop talking, and I would think everything was fine. And this lasted, for a year and a half until finally, she had in her life a spiritual path that helped her handle the challenges of daily life. I had none of that. And she said, either get a spiritual path or get a divorce lawyer. I didn't like either. Personally, like my inner dialogue, and this isn't the most politically correct thing to say, inner dialogue was I just wanted to throw her through the window. I was angry. I felt like she was taking away everything that mattered in my life, because at the time I identified with the job, with the money, with the condo, everything else. And I felt like, well, if I get a divorce, she takes away half of everything I've built. I don't like that option. And if I give into this thing, she's just controlling me, and I don't care about spirituality anyway. So obviously I was not in the most receptive, kind, compassionate place when this happened. Thank goodness I did not opt for the violent option, and instead I went to the bookstore. I checked out some books, found one called Think Logically, Live Intuitively. I'm like, that makes sense. I've felt intuition, and I'm a very logical person. I opened to a random page, and it says, this book is my answer to my niece's question, spirituality, what's in it for me? I'm like, exactly. I don't care. I don't want to do this. So you better tell me what's in it for me, because otherwise I'm out of here. And I read the book and I liked it. And in the back were resources. And I kept reading all these other books. And I would just keep, with my Silicon Valley salary, I started doing something different. I used to collect DVDs. Now what I would do is I'd grab 5 books from Amazon that I thought I might want to read at some point. Every time I'd read one, I'd lay them down in front of me. And I would just sit there and say, which one do I feel like reading now? And it was just kind of this present kind of like question mark. And then whichever one came to me, I would read that one. And then I would repeat the process with 5 more books when I finished. And I went through this process till finally I went to a live retreat and then was like, I'm hooked. Like I was hooked. And after a taste of truth, of presence, of authenticity, I just fell in love with who I was becoming as I started to realize, oh, this codependency, this self-esteem, these challenges, the sweeping the issues under the rug, that doesn't work anymore. I mean, it never worked, but I had the illusion. I thought it worked, right? But then I came to realize, not only does it not work, my ideas of pretending it didn't work don't even work. I can't delude myself anymore. I just have to accept this doesn't work. And I need a new way of living that does. And that's what spirituality offered me. So it's not a graceful path. It's not a pretty path. It has not been a pleasant path. It led ultimately to divorce, to leading the corporate world, to foreclosing on my home. It was a total destruction of the entire life that I lived. The only real remnant of my life that still came with me. I mean, I was always a good person and kind, so that never changed. But of my outer life, the one thing that stayed constant was my son. And I am so grateful for that. And he and I have a fantastic relationship. But other than that, the job, the money, the house, the wife, you name it, it was gone. But I am so grateful for all that fell away. I always looked at it as not what was taken away from me, but my life was deconstructing. All the parts that didn't work were breaking down. And from these pieces, whether you call them Lego pieces or whatever, that's the metaphor that works well here. I started to rebuild, reconstruct a life that does work, a life that feels good, that feels alive, that feels connected. Because if she hadn't threatened me with that divorce, over a decade ago, you and I wouldn't have this conversation. So for that, I am eternally grateful, and also grateful for the forgiveness and the healing that I've gone through to be able to say, that's for the highest good, and we're good now.
That's so wonderful. I felt that in my core. I remember sitting at a meditation session a few months back and saying, I get the feeling that everything works out right in my life. And it was an absolute contradiction to everything that had ever happened in my life. It just felt like, but all of it happened to get me to that point right there where I was sitting in absolute peace among people who were like-minded. And even now, everything is always working out perfectly. And And that doesn't explain how I got in that argument yesterday, but it it explains something because of how wonderful life is. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And how everything falls away. I love that analogy. There's still things, because I've been on the spiritual path, this particular spiritual path, since about 2008, and there are still things from childhood that I see myself looking to try to grasp onto again, and truths that or ideas that I was taught that now you understand what I'm saying.
I know it's a challenge. The spiritual path presents to us a way of living that, like you said, contradicts everything we've grown up, everything we've learned, every part of our personality we have taken to be who we are. We have to, at some point, reevaluate. Right. And I think the challenge on the spiritual path is we hear ideas that sound great, and then we go to live it and we're like, this doesn't work. Right. Because we have an old way of thinking. So one of the pieces of advice I always give people is to, take an idea and don't believe a word of it. Right. Don't take it as gospel ever. Right. But test it out. Try it out. Give it 10 days, 15 days, 30 days, 60 days. Just try something out and see what happens. Right. Because at the worst, we become aware of what doesn't work for us. And at best, we get to actually shift, transform, and discover a new way of showing up in the world that actually could work. And most likely, the real thing is we're usually somewhere in between, right? Usually we find a piece of this idea that resonates and works, and some of it that doesn't. And that doesn't mean that the idea is bad or good, but I really look at it as we're all on this spiritual path together. We're all in a river. We're all going down the river. Some are in front of a rock. Some are up higher. Some are on the bank. Some are further down near the ocean. Some are at the waterfall about to go over. We're all in this river together. And when we really see it from that perspective, we realize it's only a matter of movement, of growth, of awareness. And there's nothing wrong with not getting an idea, right? It's so easy to punish ourselves when we don't get a spiritual idea. Our teacher says, this is the way it is. And we see everybody else around us living by it. We go to a workshop and everyone's having the enlightened experience up there. And we're going, what about me? Why didn't I get it, right? That's just the ego wanting to compare and make a difference. But that just means they're at a different place in the river. And maybe we will never see that part of the river, right? It's easy to compare and say, maybe we will never go over that waterfall. Or maybe we will never see that bank on the spiritual path, on the spiritual river. Maybe our path is right here, right now, in a way that will never be for anybody else in any other way. And it's so easy to compare it and think that we should have the experiences other people have. But the reality is, this is our experience. This is what we're having right now.
That is so awesome. That's the experience I get every time I read your emails. Oh,
I'm honored.
My goodness, where do I even go from there? That's all I want to do is hit rewind and listen to that again.
You can with the replay, but for now, we're here right now, and your mind wants to find a question, a place to go. It wants to know what to do with our time together, right? But your heart and your belly actually know the answer, and sometimes it's a moment of silence, and you just go, oh, that's it. And sometimes you go, I don't know. I did a Facebook Live the other day, and I was stumbling over my words all over the place, right? That was part of being present, right? Because I wasn't trying to be perfect. I was trying to be here. And my mind was trying to control it and say what I should have said, what I could have said, what would be most educational or teaching. But I don't see myself as a teacher. And it's funny, when you introduced me as a blogger, and no one's ever done that before. No one has ever called me a blogger before. I've never called myself a blogger, never thought of myself that way. People use all kinds of other labels, teacher, guru. They misspell my name and call me Christ. I mean, you name it, I've been given the label. Okay? Blogger is not one of them. And I thought, there's a resonance there as I'm shifting how I show up in the world and how I show up in service. Because for so many years, I did what the infopreneur entrepreneur is supposed to do. I made programs, I sold programs. And then a few months ago, I'm like, that's not how I want to show up in the world. And I shifted entirely to a whole new model of just showing up, giving, and saying, I'm not going to sell my stuff anymore. I'm going to convert it to Kindle books or give it away. I don't know what I'm going to do with all of it. Right. And now I just say, hey, if you like me, if you believe in what I'm doing, feel free to support me on my Patreon page, but don't feel compelled, don't feel required. But if that's what present inspiration calls, feel free to support in that way. And I'm just going to keep giving what I can in whatever ways I can. I'm just going to keep showing up. That's the moment. And some days I know what I'm sharing. And other days I'm like, I'm outside. It's pretty. It's warm. It's California. It's sunny. And that's what I've got for you.
That's right. When I first started Days of Zen, it was, no, I've got to get something out to them every day. I've got to find the photograph and I've got to find the inspiration and I've got to make it to me and I've got to touch people's hearts. Now, it wasn't forced, don't get me wrong, but it was sitting on the mat waiting for that to happen every day. And it did. But then there are times when I was a little bit busy. I'm like, oh, I let them down. I missed a day. It's like, wait, hold on a second. Who am I working for again?
Yep.
But I'm going to show the Miracle Store site on the screen. This is a store that you opened up recently, right? Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so this is actually a big part of the shift I've been making. So for years, I sold information products, programs to help people change their life from the inside out, overcome fear, how to write affirmations, how to overcome self-criticism, because that was my biggest core issue. So I created all these programs, but I realized there's a fundamental challenge with it, which is I will never reach people who aren't already interested in changing their lives from the inside out. I will never reach the people like I was 10 years ago. Those people won't be interested. And the other way we can change our lives is from the outside in. We change our environment. We change what we look at, what we see in the mirror, in our lives, in our cupboards, on ourselves. We change what we see and it changes our inner environment. If we see a message that's positive, if we see something that says, believe in miracles like this, right? It makes us actually pause and go, there is something more. And what I really wanted was two things. One is for our own lives, right? When we are going through our daily lives, to have these messages going into our brain on a daily basis, all the time, just reminding us of the goodness, the beauty, the inspiration, the positivity in life. So that's the first thing, is change our lives from the inside out. But the second thing is, like I said, information products and programs will never reach the people outside of those who are already interested. What about the person in the supermarket who's having a bad day? The mom whose kid is throwing a tantrum on the ground and she's going, this is again, and she's having trouble just paying for her darn groceries, right? Sometimes she just needs a reminder, or he just needs a reminder. And seeing a shirt on us that says, do all things with love, or be the miracle you want to see in the world, these types of things, sometimes they make someone else pause, go, okay, maybe life isn't so bad. Or maybe they just take a deep breath. Maybe they just slow down in their life enough to make the checkout successful, to connect with their child, to handle the loss of a loved one or the pain in their life. They don't care about changing inside out. They don't care about overcoming fear or writing affirmations. They don't care about overcoming self-criticism. But seeing a shirt on me or on anyone who's wearing one sometimes will just make them feel like the world's okay for a moment, right? And if enough people felt like the world is okay for just a moment, that's a lot of okayness in our world. And a lot of people who get a little bit of reprieve in their daily life from the challenges they have. And so the Miracle Store for me was a way that I could advocate for beauty, for goodness, for inspiration in the world. And so that's what it's about. And that's why it's there. And I've wanted to do it for a long time. And finally, a couple of years ago, I said, if not when, if not now, when, right? And so it just became a now, one day, one step at a time.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for doing that. You know what? When I first saw your store, I saw the products and I saw the sayings, and I thought this is nice. What really drove it home for me was when you started filming those videos in the morning where you're doing the run and you're wearing the shirts that say "Be the Miracle" and shirts that are very positive, and you see the cars all going by you, and you get this feeling of, wow, you are out there sharing a really positive message and making a difference, not just as you're speaking with us, but to everyone who sees you, and that's huge. That is a big impact, and I really do appreciate that.
And thank you for sharing that, because I do those videos. I'm not aware of the cars around me at all, right? I never even notice them because I'm so here present with what's going on. But that I do that walk every day, right? And it never occurred to me until you were just speaking right now that there's some people who will see me every day who commute at the same time as I'm walking in the same direction, because I have a time and a pattern and everything. And they might just come to look forward to that every day. I don't know. But that idea actually makes me want to do that even more, because some days I don't wear a shirt, right? Because I'm just wearing, whatever I happen to be. So I'm going to take that to heart and be with that and just remind myself, like, some people may actually start looking forward to that every day. So thank you for that gift, Tim.
You're welcome. I haven't seen the shirtless Chris. I think what you mean is you're not wearing one of the miracle shirts.
Yes, that is true. I haven't done shirtless Chris on that walk, except for early summer when it was really sunny out and warm, and I was trying to get a little bit of vitamin D.
Right. Oh, that's fantastic. All right, thank you so much. This is such a blessing. I'm just wondering, what's the end game? Where are you going with all of this? You keep examining one question after the next, and just to shift to the Days of Zen community, you have to take a look at some of Chris's blogs. They will take you down a path of duality. Basically, I think what he's doing, I'm not sure if he's conscious in doing this, is he's creating this duality by saying, is this the truth or is this polar opposite the truth? And I know you mentioned it before, but ultimately it gets you recognizing that there is really a unity among all of it, and a place where we all fit within this structure, and it creates a feeling of community that I really enjoy. And not only that, but the content, the questions that you ask, they are not easy questions. These are deep diving questions that sometimes take days to really dig into, and you can feel Chris's heart. I believe, and you can confirm this, Chris, if it's true or not, that you're actually going through some things that are pertinent to the questions that you're asking, that you need to know these answers for yourself, not just for us.
Yes, that's absolutely true. One of the things I learned early on in my spiritual journey is anytime I have an idea that I'm testing out, right? And I think that's a really important distinguishment is we test out these ideas. Anytime I'm testing it out, or I've gone through a spiritual workshop or an experience, I am trying to integrate it, right? And I always tell people, talk about it, teach it, share it. It doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. Share your experience and see what comes back. And in my case, it's part of how I integrate what I'm learning, right? Because then I can ask, like, is this real? What's true? These are the questions I'm struggling with. Where do they meet? Where do they not meet? What does life look like if I follow one answer? What does life look like if I follow the other? Are those the only two possibilities? And in the end, every single thing I share, every single idea I share comes down to two core ideas, okay? One is basically curiosity, okay? Be curious. Look for what is true, right? That's another way of saying look for the truth, right? Curiosity is actually being open to the things we don't know. And the second idea, be in the present moment. if we're curious and in the present moment, as long as we do those two things, everything else will answer itself, right? All these dichotomies, all these questions we have, they actually answer themselves when we are present in the moment and curious, right? If we're just curious but not present, we're just in our head, we're wandering off, we are not going to actually find true answers that work for us in our lives. On the other hand, if we're only present and not curious, we're really no more enlightened than an amoeba or sitting on the mat and meditating in the cave. And I'm not judging that. I'm just saying that it's not a way of finding a way of living in the world, right? We need presence and curiosity to live in the world as a spiritual being. Otherwise, if we miss either of those pieces, we're left hanging either way in our heads or way in our hearts. And to be integrated, right, these ideas need to be mind, body, spirit. You know, they need to be all of us. And that's part of why these questions can be so challenging that you talk about, because one of them speaks to the mind, the other speaks to spirit, another speaks to the heart or timeless wisdom. And we go, well, the mind sounds right, the spirit sounds right. Which one is it? And that's because one is going curiosity, only one is presence, only bring them together. And we get the gifts that teach us our truth, not my truth, not your truth, Tim, our unique individual truth to see what is my life like right now.
My personal favorite is when you have the spiritual truth. It sounds so spiritual. Okay, let's dissect that. Let's find out what's really true here. And it might turn out that it is true. The one place I'd like to offer, you said that there are two things. I'd like to offer that maybe there's one other. Mm-hmm. That if it doesn't end with love, it's probably not right.
True. And I would even go one step deeper than that and circle back and say that when we are truly present, presence includes the quality of love. Absolutely. Right? Presence includes the quality of truth, of curiosity, of kindness, all these things. And so for me, I find even when I say I want happiness, I want joy, I want to be more loving, whatever that is, any of that stuff, when I'm truly fully present, I realize, oh, I already have access to all these things within me. So, I would even circle back and say love is an extension of presence. And even an extension of curiosity, because we're usually not curious unless there's some quality of love within us reaching out into the world, right? Reaching out and saying, what's this thing about, right? And that's it has a flavor of love in it. Absolutely.
I would even say that the idea of awakening is just recognizing that the love was always there.
Yeah, being present with what is.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, wow. You bet, Tim.
So I'm going to wrap this up. This actually wraps up our summer session season. Thank you all for being a part of this summer session and being a part of Days of Zen and continuing to participate and enjoy this community. It certainly is a blessing to me every time that I can share with you, and when I get your feedback, it just, like Chris said earlier, it just builds and it warms my heart and it makes it a joy. So thank you. I encourage you to check out Chris Cade's site and the miracles.store, which will also definitely brighten your day and brighten the day of the people around you. Thanks again, Chris.
Thank you, Tim, for this opportunity to share, to serve, and thank you for doing this work in the world. Just as I needed the thanks early on, I'm grateful to offer that to you as well. Keep doing this wonderful work. People need you. They need to hear from you, and they need what you're offering. So thank you for being the miracle in the world.
Have a great day.
You too, Tim.